We're restructuring the senior management tier, Damon said, avoiding eye contact as he shuffled papers on his desk. Your position has been eliminated. I sat across from him, hands folded neatly in my lap, the same posture I'd held through thousands of meetings over 32 years at Calridge Equity Partners. The heavy oak desk between us had been there longer than I had. Damon had only been sitting behind it for 6 weeks. I see, I replied, my voice calm despite the pounding in my chest. May I ask about the timing? I'm scheduled to retire in less than 8 weeks. He finally looked up, his expression a rehearsed mix of regret and resolve. At 38, Damon Shore was exactly the kind of CEO the board thought we needed. Young, aggressive, and straight from Silicon Valley. The restructuring timeline is non-negotiable, he said. We need to implement changes immediately to meet quarterly projections. HR will handle your exit package. He glanced at his watch. They're waiting for you now. I stood, composed as ever. I'd weathered market crashes, hostile takeovers, and countless storms. This, too, I would weather. Thank you for the opportunity to serve Calridge, I said, extending my hand. I wish you and the firm continued success. He looked momentarily, startled by my composure, but shook my hand briefly before reaching for his phone. Security would escort me out. My name is Harriet Vaughn, Senior Vice President of Operations at Calridge Equity Partners, or I was until 15 minutes ago. I'm 64. I built this firm from a modest regional office into a nationally respected institution. Now, all I had to show for it was a cardboard box with a potted plant, a few photos, and a coffee mug my grandson painted. As I walked to my car, Kevin, the security guard I'd hired 7 years ago, trailed behind me, visibly uncomfortable. I'm sorry about this, Mrs. Vaughn, he said softly. It doesn't seem right. You're just doing your job, Kevin, I said, placing the box in my trunk. How's your daughter? Still pursuing engineering? He blinked, surprised I remembered. Yes, ma'am. She made the dean's list last semester. Wonderful. She'll go far. I took one last look at the gleaming Calridge building. 15 stories of glass and steel that didn't even exist when I started. We used to operate out of 3 cramped rooms above a pharmacy. At home, my husband Thomas met me at the door. You're home early, he said, alarmed. What happened? I've been restructured, I replied, setting the box on the kitchen counter. Effective immediately. He flushed with outrage. They can't do that. You've given them your entire career. You're retiring in 2 months. It's done, Thomas, I said gently. No point getting worked up. You're the reason Marion Bay invested in Calridge in the first place, he argued. Have you called Charles? Not yet. I still have dinner with Eleanor tonight. You gonna tell her? I won't hide it, but I won't complain either. That was always my way. Quiet professionalism. I didn't shout or threaten. I worked hard, led with integrity, and let my results speak. That night at Mercer's, the steakhouse where Eleanor Blackwood and I had met monthly for a decade, she saw right through me. Harriet, she said, embracing me. You look troubled. Over gin and bourbon, I told her the story. Calridge fired you? She snapped, setting down her glass. 2 months before retirement? That's not just disrespectful, it's idiotic. The CEO wants to make his mark, I said evenly. It's standard practice. There's nothing standard about removing the person who built your investor relationships, especially before a funding round. You knew about our Thursday games? Everyone knows. Between the 3 of us, Charles, Jeffrey, and myself, we control nearly $200 million in Calridge capital. She leaned in. Charles was already uneasy about Damon, too focused on quick returns, too dismissive of long-term strategy. He called me last week, asked what I thought about pulling out. My surprise must have shown, I told him. As long as you were still there, I wasn't worried. That was last week. I said nothing, but I felt the shift. Damon hadn't just dismissed an employee, he'd shaken the foundation of trust we'd built. The next morning, as I knelt in my garden pulling weeds, my phone rang. It was Jeffrey Williams from Travanta Corp. I heard, he said. Charles called me last night. We're skipping golf today. I was going to tell you both. Harriet, being fired after 32 years deserves more than silence. Charles is livid. He's already calling board members. Moments later, Charles himself rang. I just spoke with Philip Peterson, he growled. Marion Bay is pulling out of the funding round. Effective immediately. Charles, you didn't need to do that. Yes, I did. This isn't just about your firing. Damon's dismantling everything Calridge stood for. He wasn't wrong. The numbers, the structure, the people. Everything had changed in Damon's 6 short weeks. The board wants to meet with you today, Charles said. They want to fix this. Harriet, you have more power than you think. The question is, what do you want to do with it? The boardroom felt different from this side of the table. We were not informed in advance of your dismissal, Philip began. I understand, I said calmly. Victoria, the board member who had hired me 32 years ago, leaned forward. We're in crisis, Harriet. Between Marion Bay, Zentran, and likely Travanta, we're down $180 million. I'm aware. We'd like you to help us rebuild investor confidence, Philip said, possibly step in as interim CEO. I was stunned. I had planned to retire, but I needed to speak to Charles, Eleanor, and Jeffrey, not as an emissary, but as a peer. That evening, they came to my home. Would you consider it? Jeffrey asked. I don't know. Thomas and I have plans. Then delay them, Charles said. But if you return, it should be on your terms, Eleanor added. Not as a figurehead, as a leader. CEO, I laughed. I'm 64, and wise, Charles said. That's what they need. They were right. I wasn't finished. Not yet. The next day, I walked back into Calridge, not as a supplicant, but as someone who knew her worth. Philip began. We'd like to offer you interim CEO with full compensation and a review in 6 months. I have a counteroffer, I replied, sliding a single page across the table. They read it, eyebrows lifting in unison. You don't want to be CEO? Victoria asked. No, I want to be Chief Relationship Officer, a permanent executive role with board voting rights, overseeing all client-facing operations. And I want the position codified in the charter. In return, Philip asked, I'll restore investor trust, and I'll stay 1 year to establish the role and train my successor. Silence fell. Then slowly, heads nodded. 3 days later, I stood at the podium in Calridge's largest conference room. Change is inevitable, I said, but how we manage it determines whether we grow or collapse. I outlined a new vision. Technological innovation, balanced by enduring human relationships. I introduced the role of Chief Relationship Officer, not just for me, but for the future. The funding round had not only been restored, it was oversubscribed by $20 million. From the back of the room, I spotted Damon. He nodded. He'd been reassigned as head of innovation strategy. He would learn. A year later, I retired, on my terms. Laura, my assistant of 12 years, succeeded me. Thomas and I finally traveled to Italy. Calridge thrived. The legacy I left behind wasn't a title. It was a culture of balance, respect, and resilience. My greatest victory wasn't revenge. It was restoration.